Okay, so Avengers Endgame. This will be my spoiler-filled review. I purposely put it off because I wanted to be able to do a spoiler-filled review first. I don't have many spoiler-free things to say about this movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, go see it. They're not officially sold out anymore. It's made an ungodly amount of money, but there are seats. Go see it. What are you doing here? Leave. But this movie is the follow-up to Avengers Infinity War, one of the best superhero movies of all time, one that was universally praised for being a magnificent execution of such a large conglomeration of heroes and an overarching story with 21 films leading up to it. Well done. Honestly, before I saw either of these movies, Infinity War or Endgame, if I had to guess which one would be the better, I would have said the latter, because it comes later, it has the benefit of wrapping up all these storylines in one, and Infinity War would probably just be more and more setup. But that is not the case. I actually do like Infinity War much more than Endgame, and I made that prediction starting right after Infinity War. And I was right after that, because Infinity War was this incredibly tight, compact narrative. It was beautiful, a great idea to have your main A story following the main villain, with the heroes taking on more of just really a bunch of more B stories, an observation many people have made. By no means am I the first to say that. But Thanos was the star, and I knew with Endgame that wouldn't be the case. The heroes would come back into the spotlight, and that alone made me a little more hesitant to believe that Endgame was going to be as different and interesting as Infinity War. But really the bigger difference for me here was the pacing. Infinity War has just remarkable, flawless pacing where it just builds up to this crescendo at the end, and there's this magnificent moment, and it all just settles. And it's just perfect. The pacing there, the release of tension at the end with the defeat of the heroes, beautiful. But I knew from there Endgame had an uphill battle, but with the opening of Endgame, I had my hopes raised again, having this very dystopian feeling, this post 9/11-esque parallels being drawn of post-tragedy America, you know, people saying they have to move on, the sudden crying, the dealing with trauma, and just mass PTSD, which is a real thing, collective societal PTSD. I imagine after something like a snap, it would freaking happen. And to Marvel's credit, they don't pull their punches in addressing this in very brief, as everything is in this movie, brief clips of Captain America sitting down with support groups, a help group. He seems to be mentoring it. Now, of course, during this beginning segment of the movie, the team rallies and goes off and finds Thanos, who has used the Infinity Stones to destroy the Infinity Stones, and therefore they are all gone, and they kill him. Thor quite brutally cuts his head off. I enjoyed that. That was a good, like, wow, there's no going back. And I knew at that point Ant-Man's time travel theory that everyone's been talking about would have to be what this movie is about, especially with the whole them suiting up thing in the trailer that I really need to stop watching trailers. But we have this 5-year jump in the meantime, and that again is something I enjoy. You can't say that the snap didn't have stakes when there is a 5-year jump that is never undone. There's 5 years where half the population of the universe is gone. I know this is a really dumb, like, nitpicky thing, but with how time works in space and the fact that when you're closer to black holes, time moves differently, like a second there would be years out there. There's parts of the universe that are near black hole where the snap happened, people kind of got vague and dusty for a second, and the snap unhappened, and they came back together, and they are all just like, that was weird. Assuming that there's planets with life on them near black holes, which there might not be, but theoretically. But there's this 5-year jump, and they have to rally. Ant-Man comes out of his thing. They get Tony Stark, who now has a daughter, to get invested in time travel, yada, yada, yada. Time travel back in time, and this is where the movie really lost me. Not because of the Back to the Future 2 aspect, which once again is an observation everyone's made. It's very Back to the Future 2. That I dug. I love Back to the Future movies, as I've said several times in this channel. They're like my biggest guilty pleasure movies of all time. I freaking love the first one, and I think the second one's good, and the third one is fine. But to me, it was just the amount of fan service shoved in during these times. There were certain fan service scenes that definitely worked, but so much of it just kind of was like, I get it. Okay, we need to do this again, fine, all right, stop. It felt like Marvel sitting back and just looking at its own works and just being like, look how amazing we are. I didn't dig that entirely. There were certain sequences which did work, like the whole Captain America fighting Captain America. Even my nerd boner started going off there. That was just cool. And yes, that is America's ass. It's absolutely America's ass. Although the person I was sitting next to missed the part where that was first raised, so they just thought Captain America, without any context, looked at his own ass and called it America's ass. And they then turned to their boyfriend and were like, why did he, what? He doesn't seem like that kind of guy. The context of the earlier comments really important for that one. But then we have Black Widow dying, all this sacrifice, and I give the movie credit because it didn't just fully undo the snap. There are stakes here, heroes are lost. But of course the teams get all their stones, come back together. Huge epic battle, which once again, kinda lost me a little bit. I loved the spectacle of it in some ways. Seeing Cap wield Mjolnir, where I was like, okay, cool, I guess, but why is he able to control lightning? I get why he's worthy of wielding it, cool, fine, but he doesn't have lightning powers, and we've been specifically told that the lightning powers come from Thor, not from the hammer. That was like a big proponent of Thor Ragnarok, so I don't know why he suddenly has lightning powers, but apparently now Captain America is also the god of thunder, because we're specifically told the hammer is not the source of lightning, it's just a focal point. So Cap can wield lightning, I guess, if he has Mjolnir. But the big spectacle ending for me was just kind of, I don't know, it's a lot of pretty eye candy, and we get the reunification of these heroes, and I feel like if they had actually had a couple of movies between Infinity War and Endgame, this would have worked a lot better. But even though we were told there's a 5-year time jump, we didn't really get to experience it much, so it just kind of felt like, boop, boop, back. So I do appreciate the moments we're given here. There are 10 out of 10 badass, fan-cheering, fist-pumping moments, but the overall narrative of how Endgame ended wasn't bad, but I just found it not nearly as engaging and well-paced as Infinity War. The fat Thor thing I thought was fine and funny. The Big Lebowski parallels are there, and they're cute. That's really the only word you can use to describe them. But I am extremely excited to see Thor go off with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Talk about a dream pairing. But that's really the only movie that I'm now excited for in Marvel's future. I don't know, this was such a firm closing for these 22 movies overarching storylines with so many characters wrapped up, the death of Tony Stark and his I am Iron Man moment, which was great. Again, another 10 out of 10 fist-pumping moment, but it wrapped everything up so nicely, I feel like Marvel may have shot themselves in the foot for the future, because many people I've talked to have said, yeah, that was good, I feel like it's done, I feel like it's tied up, over, Marvel, done. And I don't think that's what they're going for. They need to keep the momentum going forever, and it feels like they've come to a full stop. I will watch as Guardians of the Galaxy, or whatever they want to call it, with Thor being with the Guardians, because I just feel like that's a dream pairing, but even though I love the character Spider-Man, I'm just not that interested in this movie. The only thing that I would say is bad in this film was the ending for Captain America, purely because it clearly breaks the rules they established earlier on, where if you go back and change something, you will be in a parallel reality. Again, that's clearly stated, and yet somehow Captain America gets to be in his own reality, even though he went back in time and changed things? Which I get there's explanations for out there, but you have to admit, without kind of outside the box thinking or loopholes that you have to invent as the viewer, it does not make sense for these stringent rules they set up. So that did bother me a little bit as well. If you're going to have time travel films, you can just ignore it and have fun with it. I'm great, but if you give us a time travel film where you explicitly establish rules and then ignore them, that'll bug me. I'm fine with Falcon being Captain America. The actor there has not really had his moment to shine beyond just his brief lines of dialogue here and there, so I'm excited to see what he can bring to the role once he's really given a focal point. But really the only way Marvel could keep me interested here beyond just mild passing interest in selecting whichever films I feel like down the road is if they start doing more team-up films. I don't know why they keep insisting on solo movies. Why can't we get a consistent Thor and Captain Marvel, Black Panther and Hulk movie? Like, just at least duo them up. I mean, these actors are fine working together, and it's not like you're assembling a whole Avengers film. Just get a couple of them together and make a storyline happen. It worked great in Thor Ragnarok with Thor being there with the Hulk, but again, it was a Thor-centric movie. I feel like doing ones where it's title two characters will open the door for them being a lot more weird and wild and open to these different ideas that the comics have been doing so well. Anyway, that's just my thought on Avengers Endgame. It was good, more fan service than my personal taste would like. I think I'd rate it a solid 7 out of 10, with Infinity War being a more solid 9. For superhero movies, obviously. We're not comparing any of these things to like The Godfather, because that would be ridiculous to do that. Anyway guys, let me know what you thought of Avengers Endgame in the comments down below. I'm curious to see what you thought and would love to hear from you. Have a good one, y'all. Peace!